if you don't mind. So without any further ado, as I said before, She File Training attended by yourselves with me, Fabian. Enjoy it. Please feel free to stop me at any time because it's too. We can have quite a lot of discussion and topics. I think it's excellent that we do it this and grow. I'm a safety professional. I've been in the industry for 18 years. I know everything. I'm always willing to learn and share so that we can learn through the process together. Introduction, as I said, my name is Fabian Buckley. I'm currently CPCMP. I'm also a director for safety manager quite recently for projects out there, and then I came back to South Africa, WIB Construction and Safety, which I'll be going a little bit into. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell. First, sorry, and then just with regards to how many years of experience do you have? Just share with us your introduction, please. Dean, you can go ahead.
Hello, training, which was very good. For about almost 4 years now, and I started, and then since then, obviously progressed on officer responsibilities. But I know that the She File is a big things that we're looking for. So that's me.
Thank you, Jadine. Hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Asavela, please go ahead.
Morning, guys. My name is Asavela Skral, the consultant. So I'm quite new in the industry, and so that's basically it.
Okay, thank you, Asavela. So detail for you guys because we have the whole day. So same understanding with regards to She File, and go through it as slow as possible. So that you should have a much better understanding about how to compile, and that's my intention for this training. Thank you, Asavela. Mr. Gerald Jit, can you? Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Everyone, I'm Jerlin from India. I have completed my engineering degree. Currently, I'm looking for a new officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerald. To She File compilation and review.
Yes, sir. So I have little experience.
Next, we have John. Please go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. I'm John. I'm here from the north to be part of that. So that I know how to develop it, and it can help me. The fact that I thank you.
Thank you, John. Experience do you have in compiling SHE files or reviewing SHE?
I've got about seven years compiling safety files for on projects.
Okay, thank you, John. Okay, next we have Mariana. Of yourself and your years of experience in SHE. Can you hear us, Mariana? Please unmute and you can speak, please. Okay, Mariana's. Thank you everybody for joining us today. As I said, for those that have just, and I hope that everybody will enjoy the session today. Let's communicate as much as we can. Let's share our experiences. As everybody will learn and grow from each other. Please do not feel shy to judge anybody. This is a neutral, so this is a neutral ground for everybody. Anybody else, we all on the same playing field, and we all here this day's session that we're gonna have. Okay. Obviously, I need to explain to you quickly our construction and safety. WIB is actually Women in Business. And 10 and my sister-in-law, and she's continued the business since 2010, doing construction work as well. So just our why quickly, 2010 as a construction and safety organization. Construction and safety is done in the industry at large. Sorry, guys. Okay, John, I think it's you. Please, can you just mute?
Okay.
John.
Okay.
Thank you. Because obviously when you want to speak, all right, and you can raise your hand. I'm gonna go in as far as the process that we. Where did I stop? So it is our focus, specific needs, or sorry, our why is to focus on all our clients for surveys and feedback sessions, while ensuring we do not. Our why is to ensure that they are highly motivated levels in a psychologically safe environment they feel. So we do the same even with our auto repair shop approach with our workforce as well, with our team. We believe in changing the status quo through a coaching management incidents and reduce severe injuries by working into the through such training courses we offer that we can foster knowledge sharing as well. So just a quick on the setup for the day's training. Obviously, yeah, it's introductions. We'll then have a short 15-minute break. Everybody to please assist us with the times, because training and I forget about the time. So if somebody wouldn't mind being really appreciated. So please stop me at 9:30. And then we'll come back. We'll start again and then we'll have another break. From 12 to 12:30 will be lunch, and then we come back from 12 every hour. On the hour, we'll have can have a 10-minute break. But I guarantee you that we will this as possible. Thank you, Jadine, for so I hope that everybody we will have a good session together today. I said pertaining to the session, it's not everybody to be communicating. Please, when asked question, agree with it, or if you have had an experience with it or not, raise your hand, and then you can obviously speak, acknowledge you, and then you are free to speak. Today, Jadine will know about our parking lot. We keep any important questions or statements related to the topic at hand. It might be something that we would, the general topic on HSE that we might want to speak on, much to the topic as possible, please. That's basically the parking lots, this agreement questions that you feel is related, but you might maybe want to park it in the parking lot. And then obviously if there's any personal stuff. All right, so let's jump straight in. We can obviously SHE file itself, the documentation, they're touching on some of the legalities and some of the regards to the SHE files. I think it's important for us to understand it through a SHE file. And what I have planned is, if many have worked with Cecil, they would have extremely difficult SHE to get through the process. But yeah, we will step as slow as possible so that everybody can understand it should be compiled, and also what will we do as contractor SHE files through the process. Very similar to the, obviously, I'm going to give you a few pointers as to how to ensure that you get the best results out. Without any further ado, let's go in. The first point is pertaining and the definition. So what is the definition? I'm going to be sharing some information because it's obviously there are parts of this training,
Okay,
but you will information,
sure, sure.
and you can also apply it. So you move in Africa as well sometime soon.
Okay.
So some of the information, but
Okay,
as I said, you can also learn from it as well.
Okay.
All right. Thank
Thank
you. Construction Regulation 2014 definition. Give me a minute, please. My nephew just making a lot of a noise. Just give me. Sorry, I apologize for that. All right. So the definition of means a file or other record containing the information is regulations, and obviously they're referring to the construction regulation. Okay, a bit of other definition: site activity or project specific clients, health and safety specification. Please, as we will be discussing it as well. And obviously next we have the health and safety specification. It states that by the client pertaining to all health construction work means a site activity or project client pertaining to all health and safety requirements. Okay. Some would also say about a health and safety file. So every contract and Subcontractor Safety Act of 85 of 1993 and the Construction Safety File. Now, the OSH Act itself obviously does your construction regulation states that you need to have a sheet under the main act itself. Okay. The following construction regulations 3.6 says a client must, sorry, and all of this information I'm going to be sharing with you. I'm missing one attachment. All of this information with you guys, as well as the 27 point indexes and all of that as well. So all of that I will. So just bear with me on that one, please. Let's ensure that the principal contractor keeps a copy of the in sub-regulation 1 in the occupational health and safety file. The client's authorized agent, or so that's the first part of the construction regulations WIB SHE file. All right. Next one, yes, it says the client must ensure that contemplates in regulation 7.1b contractor. So we can see that guys, please just mute your mics, please. John, I think it's yours.
Okay.
All right.
Fabian, sorry, I think if it is.
Yeah, the only problem is I gotta keep on. Yeah, and it's a bit of a headache. But anyway, it's okay. As well. So please, guys, just help me out there of the slide share and sometimes. So anyway, let me just go back to the presentation. Show. Okay. All right. So as I said, that's the about that the permit needs to be in the SHE file by the principal contractor as well as section 7.1b. It is kept and maintained by 7.1b. It says a principal contractor must open, which must include all documentation required in terms of which must be made available on request to an inspector, the contractor. Now we know that later on, even a contractor that is not necessarily the principal comply with certain requirements within the Act as they were. That's the reason why we also require our safety file as well available. And in the occupational health safety personnel and audited by a competent person. Now, if it's a project with an agent, it would be the agent that would come the file, as well as come through and visit your site and obviously want to have a look at your. So there was a question that was asked. I think we had a discussion about need to have to split it up between the two. Now with COVID coming into the picture as well, should we have a separate descriptive requirements as far as the law is concerned? Doesn't say how many files you should keep. It doesn't say how, etc. It just says that you need to keep a file, including your permit from the client as well. So what is a SHE file? Just some, if you don't agree with some of the definitions, but the companies, even some international companies, they utilize the SHE file is a record of information which focuses on risks within the organization. It also focuses specific projects, right? So the SHE file can be identifies the following: what can go wrong, how can we prevent it from happening, or how can we prevent what do we do when things do go wrong, how we manage some of the definitions of what some companies use a SHE file. All right, so now we're going to just touch on SHE files in place, and we'll intricate aspects of the SHE files as well. File in place. So legally, obviously, we've just slide. Sorry, we have explained to you guys that the requirement requires us to have a SHE file in place. So what does it say? To set up a construction site without a complete health and safety formality purposes, but it also protects contractors resulting from damages and raging hazards at the site. The South African law is critical about health and safety files. A safety file or contractor's file, as some people call it. 2014 and Occupational Health and Safety Act 93 require all contractors and subcontractors to have documented at all, with them this crucial. Sure, I think my wording was a bit off there. Sorry about that. Previously, requires it for it to be in place. We've touched on that. Construction Regulation Section 5 as well as 7.1b for the main contractor to have a SHE file in place. Then, why is it important for us to have a SHE file in place? Not have work stoppages, for an example, from the Department of Labor, impact financially on the company as well. The impacts of file in place will always outweigh the cost to put a profession. Obviously, we understand most projects will not start and approved by the agent or the client. Your starting point of your project is going to be, is your SHE file, have a SHE file in place or approved? There's not be able to start a project, especially if your client is not hands-on to you, that if they find out that you started work without the SHE file problem to deal with. So rather unnecessary issues, make sure that you have a proper a professional or somebody with the know-how of how to compile. Next, we have obviously the moral duty of care, right? We obviously know that in any safety process protocol or processes, we follow the legal requirement, we follow the and we also follow the moral requirements or duty of care. Demonstrates a company who cares for their people, and we structured professional file is in place because we include company procedures or policies, etc., which demonstrate what we put in place is based on what we identify with us. So when we are files, etc., we obviously know that we're communicating aspects to our SHE file and putting it in the office, and it's a nice document that actuates or some sort that is just kept over there. It's constantly being updated, constantly being worked on, informed constantly about what the changes are. We need to communicate certain things to them, and we also need to make them proof of training and those things as well. Okay. So I will aspect, always think of the iceberg that we learn in safety, underlying cost that is involved. Imagine on sites, they die on site because of a safety issue that have approved SHE file in place. Can you imagine dealing with from all sides, as well as from a civil lawsuit initiated from the deceased family side, will be able to most. And if you're working in some other countries, ladies and gentlemen, you cannot play around in those countries. They put you down with documentation and in those places. You will go to jail. And okay, so now we're going to touch on a step by step. I mentioned this is a living document or living file. Health and safety services such as on-site medicals, providing your workforce safety and healthy, as well as to be in. If you're working with some of the larger companies, that would be in place. When I say full system, I'm 2001 or OSHA's 18001 or NOSA system. Okay, but when you're working, a lot of the time sectors working for you, all they will be a SHE, the be all and end all for your project site, and that Legally compliant is the most important aspect. And if you are the principal contractor, they will also need SHE plan as well. Okay, so this is the SHE file is such an important document because full safety system on your site that is extracts from your system. Okay, SHE file is their system. Okay, so I hope what I'm actually referring to as far as the safety file being a complete full system that they're working to. So never have a generic health and safety file. Important. Never have a generic health and safety file. It's important for us to not have a generic health and safety. Anybody? No problem. Go ahead.
What we found on our projects is that a lot of issue-based risk assessments or inspections or appointment works. And I think what I've learned over the years is less is more. Specific stuff should be in each contractor's file, because the more you put in, also if you're signing appointments and things that are not his appointments. So I just know that so that it's specific to the contractor, so that we know that it works.
Perfect. Thank you, JD. We need to have project specific or site specific. A lot of the time, contractors want to take the cheap, is easy downloadable SHE files that they can get only 1,500 rand for them. They print out all these pages, not even having their company information file, and then they expect you as the client to accept that file, because it requires them to have a safety file as far as they're concerned. Specific safety file, because it doesn't help us having parts of what the contractor's scope of work is, and as of documents into a file just to make it full does not worth its value at all. Okay, all occupational health and safety documentation applicable to that, such as appointment letters, training records. There's obviously a lot more which we're going to be going into. Sample indexes or information on an index as well in the safety files. But yeah, we're going to go through it. All right, next we're going to look at this Act to Construction Regulation that it is needed for assisting the company and managing the health and safety program. Now, the reasons I've mentioned, if your company does not have a system in place, program, okay? So notify the departments or departments for specific. When you're talking in your SHE plan, you're talking about your construction coordinates. The same with the safety manager and manager, and the list can go on. personnel that are within those departments as well. So this it will be mostly documented within your SHE plan. Identify any legal requirements. So that would obviously be plant, all of that will be part of our resources, financial within that. And then obviously to develop the system doesn't mean that part of your system. And as I mentioned, for the smaller guys, it will constantly be maintaining when it comes to issue-based risk assessment, continue-based risk assessment, etc., continuously. So their single file would obviously grow, but it would still be the safety file. All right. So the law says I need to have a safety file, but now I have 10 files. You know, some people get worried by the files, but the reality is that your file itself is normally, I've always seen on majority of sites you work with, it's about growth. So then next we have the monitoring and the reviewing of the system, and obviously to have continual improvement. All right. So what is needed in a SHE file? So the Act consists of 15 within the OSH Act. Section 50 of the Act, each company must comply. Not all 21 of the regulations. Some of the regulations that are applicable to the organization added. Again, there would be a lot more on the company's scope of work and also on the where you're working in. So looking at it will be your general safety regulation, your facilities regulation for workplaces, construction regulations is obviously the key files. All right. And then to each organization. However, many companies have found by fly-by-night operators who simply sold them a file. Anyone could do that and for free as well. It doesn't have African regulations and standards as well. Now, is your standards basically add regulations into the Act as well. Your standards will give you apply to or comply with. So where specify and a standard does, your standard now takes utilize your standard. A good example would be right under construction regulation, section 16, scaffolding. Under that section, you would see there's much more information in it. The later 2004 to comply or refer to the standards within the law. So stands 10085, that would now become, so when you are working with scaffolding, you need to refer to that requirement for SANS 10085. Now in your SHE file, and you, for example, a company that works also have a copy of the SANS 10085. This is one example of the many standards that you, so sometimes you'd obviously require sounding because it's quite a lengthy document, but other times you can just refer to that, to the specific you would be complying with, like for an example, with hard hat with SANS 3097. All right. And sorry, with your regards to your the regulations that would be applicable. And as I mentioned, you can list every single one of them that could be applicable. Scope of works, you would refer to that. That's that you are complying to that section of the regulation. What is needed within the SHE file? There are certain documents that are required, also highly recommended. Okay. Going into some of the required documents and aspects that it is going to be repeated because it comes up in different indexes, just copying and pasting the stuff in here because I wanted to. I know that some of these are going to be popular, and why they are in there because it is the common indexes are from. So when it comes to let's say policies, okay, so your company will be a common occurrence within your SHE file. So okay, so I hope everybody's understanding that. So you'll see your SHE policy will be popping up in there as well. Know as well that the law does not state that you must have the law says that a company may have a policy out. That is going to change, where they're changing it from a policy system. And that's what the government is going towards system and moving away from the single page a lot of companies already have in place. Okay. Mention, excuse me, we have the SHE policies, have the SHE plan, which we get in this training today. The letter of good standing from the Department of Labor, or you can have a privatized FEM, FEM. All right, then we have a lot of these are required for South Africa, like your letter of good standing. You have as well for your employees if they get injured. Your appointment letters are legal required. The South African OSH Act. Just for examples of a couple of the appointment structure to understand and how it appoints who when you are doing it, because it can also, as far as your safety file approval. So next we have inspections and registers. Checklist, those will be live, living data, okay, within your SHE file, or if you have a SHE system. And then we also look at emergency management, incidents and accidents investigation documents. And when we talk about employee details, which we'll be covering, we talk employees, we talk about their competencies, we talk about records, etc. And we know with the POPI Act cured and not just easily available for you, as your company can be in a big. Please make sure that you'll have these documentation well. If possible, try and have it, even if you can, off some, and it has your passwords, etc. Protect information. We had even cases a couple of years ago were even kept within their employee detail files that was scanned in. Yeah, quite an embarrassment for the HR departments as well. Certificates which would not only be competency for employees, but also competency certificates of compliance as well, and then also your as well, that will also be part of it. Safety file is like your safety net. Okay, know that as safety professionals, we always have the same discussion or safety documentation as well. A lot of the time is their end. Okay, we know that as safety people to us on evidence that we've used to. We also make sure that we keep records for etc. that's done, any communication to prove that we've informed. We would always make sure that those aspects, so that we make sure that if anybody comes and assessment to that worker and because he was injured or something, have evidence that it was communicated. So this is why file is also your safety net, especially for the smaller companies, to not just think, hey, my safety file was approved, worry about that file again. It has to be constantly be communicating the changes, etc. For you. Important to ensure that you are complying. All right. So just some communication for our first break. I just want to communicate some aspects of what I think is also in being a safety net for us as safety professionals, and for us, people believe a safety file is one of their worst enemies. And the last line of defense when things go wrong. On basically your side portfolio of evidence, which is armed with evidence, vicarious liability. Anybody want to take liability? Okay, so vicarious liability definition is when someone is held responsible for that. That means that if you, as the employee of your company, unsafe, which could have a huge impact, whatever the case may be, your company will be held liability. Okay, and then you also have what is called acting of doing something or an omission, meaning somebody done. So that is vicarious liability. Become an insurmountable task for some safety personnel anymore. All right. So we decided to give you some key elements. Now I want to start it, but I know that So I think let's just see, JD, but I don't want to start it now and then after that, and then we're gonna be forgetting what we discussed. Nice and fresh after our break. And I'm also going to be asking you guys some questions should understand or know. Again, this is not a based on our understandings and opinions. Before my nephew called me yesterday, therapy companies or SEOs in South Africa ordered. So he called me to complain about on a couple of their project sites. They work in KZN. They have specific requirements, exact same big they the ring cape is totally different to the requirements in KZN. The same management, everything is the same, but there's different for the Eastern Cape, and they have a different requirements when they compile. So what I understood when I had the discussion that is at fault, it is the company of overall which is at fault, because but the two biggest areas of concern for me within these companies that are making that are not legal requirements, that are because what they are asking of companies to provide conductors out of the time and has bearing on, fortunately, because they are in a position of power, they and the contractors struggle to get their SHE files approved. A short discussion that I had with him yesterday, he's finding it so difficult as one side they get or another side of the company or division. And again, for me, this goes back to training. They understand what a SHE file should have. And another thing with the government, from the Department of Employment and Labor, Matsi, Bosana as well, was such with Pumpu, discuss some of these topics, and I keep raising it to them to say, when it comes to safety files, what should be the compliance as far as the Department of Employment and Labor is concerned, big responsibility. And the file, because it is a legal to audit and verify the compliance of these files. Tons and tons of unnecessary information. A lot of the time, just creates a whole unnecessary issue within the industry. A lot of companies as well within the industry. Information and insight to you guys, and I really hope that the Department of Employment requirements, who even if they use CIDP or one of these, I draft up something to standardize what should be in a safety file. We'll start. What we said, we'll have a 15-minute break. Yeah, quarter your legs, have some coffee, etc. And then we're gonna come straight to the safety files. Thank you. Okay, everybody should be back. Please just put thumbs that you are available so that we can start. Okay. A couple of hands going up. First things first, I'm gonna ask your experience or understanding as to on what you feel is the best way to conduct. What would you normally start with? So we'll go through step-by-step process to what would you all start with as far as what do you think is the first document on your safety file? You can go ahead.
Index.
Thank you, Jerlyn. So, yes, good point. Okay, I know many people will say, yeah, but why not the safety? You find that clients do not specify what needs in the specification itself. Sometimes they will give you a separate only reference that you would have the file according to the client needs. Okay, so some you they would require you to compile a file of index and your company requirements. So it all depends as well if the personnel's preferences out there and how you would be compiling your safety file. So yes, if you, as I mentioned, if you have an index or a specific index template that they prefer you to use their index. If they do not, you can utilize your own.
Okay.
So moving on now, so would utilize the index would obviously be because index, or they'll just explain what is the client looking at indexes, which I'm going to show you the sample that I'm going to be using. I'm using the word decent very lightly, be a lot more prescriptive, and it's another reason why of people's discretions and people's understanding, and that's where a lot of ambiguity is caused. But somehow find a way of resolving that concept. Next, we would move on to the safety or site specification. So when we're looking at the site specification, as I mentioned, we'll have the indexes in the specifications while others would not. Documents within needs to be specific to the site, and depending on your business and scope of work, your clients will issue with a will inform you of the scope and coverage of the safety file as far as client requirements, and all of that will form part of your. So we know that we're looking at the scope of work. Would not go and start making up a safety file based on performing. Imagine doing a safety file, piling activities, and you are a scaffolding contract. No, so you need to be very, very prescription. Your safety plan needs to coincide with your spec. Very, very, very important. Your safety plan would make a file, okay? But now we're just looking at the specification. Important components obviously would be what anybody can throw important sections within the index. Don't give multiples, you can just give one or two.
So I just know that we have two different files that 6 elements in. All we do is with our files is we structured it a little bit, and we first index on the file.
Okay.
So they have to go to section 25 to find incident forms. So we actually put that at the first.
That's fine. Again, that's to your discretion as you're with that as well. Thank you for that. Anybody else? Else can think of what else would be important as information pertaining to certain aspects. What would we require?
Fabian, or
Yeah, so have specific requirements that would need to be looking at. We looked at the index, which is the first part of it, as well as as I mentioned, also the contract would also be applicable. And what else would we be looking at? What else we think is important safety file?
Mr. Vela, you can answer.
That we can also add daily, weekly and checklists.
Anybody else thinks of anything that say, let's look at the legal aspect of the job? What are some of the items that jump to your mind?
Contract documents go in there, so your mandatories.
Yes. So that payments will be in there. Your legal appointments will be points. Now I just wanted to jog your memory, expect to have within a safety file. Think of the legalities, the legal aspects. What
Legal requirements. Local.
that? Yes. And give me an example of that would be in the file.
Welfare facilities.
Nothing wrong with them. All right, so let's look in a safety file. What should we be looking for of our safety file? So this would form part of your index documentation, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out of the plan and go into the specific document more detail, especially on the sheet plan important when we are compiling our sheet files. And or client compliant or not as well. And you can write them down. What I'd like to do is here before I would like you to ask you all to take 5 minutes and just write down quickly on a piece of paper be in a sheet file. So you got 5, start sharing them with you all. We can start ticking the one. Let's make it 10 items, okay? And don't write the ones that I've already appointments. Let's think of others because there's plenty there. So 10 o'clock on the dot, everybody should have written down points that they feel should be in, not necessarily right or wrong. It's based on our have, but I'm going to cover some of the points that are compliant, and then we're going to start going into actual that we're going to be going into. It's time to get us to the 5 o'clock mark. Okay, so I'm not going to ask you all to tell us what you all have written down. I'm just going to ask what you've identified. At the end, if there's something that your personal opinion or in, just raise your hand and tell us what it is, so that we can, if it should be in the index or not, so in the file. With construction regulations, we're going to look at some of the points are very important to start off with. Would be, for example, letter. All right, so in the case of a 5 would be for the principal contractor, or your old 5 3B if you utilize for the main contractor agreement. Okay, next we got to look at the next we got to have the permits in the file as okay. We have a copy of the OSH Act. You don't have to add it necessarily as well to the file. You can just have it also acceptable, because when they come in audit you just got a copy of the act, available, as well as the then we got to look at the occupational health and safety as well. You can include the quality policy as well. As I mentioned previously, the letter of good standing. And then we look at, for example, your safety instances. You will ensure that you have your safety data sheet. All right. Next up, we have our risk assessments. We're talking about the baseline risk assessment coming from the baseline risk assessment. Okay, considering, and then you would have your issue-based risk assessment in place. File, especially in the early stages of your safety, you would ensure that your files applicable to the work that needs to take place. Can anybody need to do a safety file now initially to get it approved? For example, of a risk assessment would I have in place for that activity? I hope I'm making sense with my question.
So for example, if it's applicable to them.
Yeah, project now for the first time, right? We're submitting our files to our clients that we need to get started first within the sequence of events. So risk assessment would I hand in besides my baseline file when it comes to a risk assessment? Think about it, because we're not going to give them the entire, because that means that we have not been doing proper workshop risk assessments done with a team, because we've already project. That means they are generic, necessarily project or site-specific risk assessment. So issue an example of a risk assessment be that I would have a file to review for the initial part of the job. I need to hand in my file. What would that risk assessment be for? Two.
Can I
Sorry?
take a stab? The safe work procedures. Well, yeah, the issue-based stuff. So
Yes, your safe work procedure would be part of it. I'm going to come to that one. Safe work procedures as well will be part of it. But I want you to picture. We come into a front of us now. We need to do something at that activity at that place. We file. I'm submitting the safety file to my client, viewing the file, and I want them to accept this file for mentioning what the activities is, because I want you guys to think about it. One of the first risk assessments that I would provide to my activity, what would that be? No, your method statement, Geraldine, will definitely be part of it, but there's a specific risk assessment that I'm looking for because
Yes, sir.
the one risk assessment coincides with another under section 10 of the construction regulations. But think of through the baseline, as I've mentioned, we now want to start an activity B that I would start with, that I need doing anything on that job.
sorry, I missed one.
Thank you very, very much. Sorry, I hardly, I see there's a bubble that pops up, but I can't read the chat. When I'm getting 100% perfect, your site establishment that you would have. Obviously, considering if you were working on a, you're not going to go and do a risk assessment for the site, have a site establishment, and that would be your first activity, that risk assessment for your site establishment have is your working at height risk assessment. To work on containers, they need to be removing shack, they need to work off ladders and those kind of things. And looking at height risk assessment should also be part of your is because you are required to have a risk assessment under your. So I hope that makes sense to you as to what would be the in place for those activities. Okay, and as the safe work procedures, again, must be site specific safe work procedures for previous projects that are not, excuse me, you want to fill your file or you within your system itself. So make sure that everything that I see Jadine's hand is up. You can go ahead, Jadine.
What is the difference between the safety analysis? Because I know there's in it a safe work method statement, then it's a very confusing. I don't know if I'm the only one who finds.
I can throw more spanners in the works as well. You got safe work as well. So that's to add to the additional people experience. So just to give you, I'm sure that I'm quite confident in my understanding. Your initial document that is drafted indicating activity. Now, I'm going to explain to you all a little bit of details in your quality control aspect. Okay. I started in my early stages in 2003 from the supervisor side, but it was provided to the right. It later became a requirement within the side of things, and then that's where you started getting the terminology of statements. Okay. Now, as a statement is a internal myth, what equipment will be used, what people will be used, what specific methods would we utilize to get that, and even your execute how you're going to get this equipment into that specific area. How many can go as far as even how many specific, how many pistons. That's as far as you can go, and even deeper would require. When it comes to a safe working procedure, safe work procedure, the company would utilize as far as rigging is concerned, etc. There will be a specific procedure in manner. You would need to follow these specific steps to be acceptable, or the activity to be acceptable, and to be procedures like welding procedures and those things that also have, but it is more around your quality process, step-by-step process of how you're gonna, for example, weld, you tack it, what is your millimeters of weld material, blah 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 blah. It can go very deep. But in safe operating procedures, a lot of people say your safe work manual as to how you need to do the job. Your safe only difference is that it works normally around operations or meaning that when I'm operating a crane, I use assembly with a safe working procedure. Safe working procedure will be activities in the field, grinding, cutting, gas cutting. Maybe those would all form parts of our safe working procedure. Will pertain to operating equipment, operating machinery, guidance as to how you need to do their job in that specific way. Analysis, that is now your risk assessment. What we call continuous based risk assessment. If you understand, we have a baseline risk assessment, which is your main assessment for your entire scope of work for your company. Then have an issue-based risk assessment, which is to the activity that's been performed, and a very good way of risk assessment as your initial guidance, and from the assessment information for the specific hot work activity. So in your baseline, you'll have into grinding, welding, gas cutting into your hot work activity, welding and all of that. I don't know if that will all form parts of the hot work. Now, what you would then do is from your baseline, populated onto your advise everybody to do with a laptop and a projector on the table. You would then also utilize your method statements within the process when you are doing that job. Okay, now your job safety analysis is now considered as that is your on the job. So you will consider the activity that's been performed, and you would normally focus on those areas. But from your issue, or another tool to use for your issue-based risk assessment, based risk assessment, or JSA or DSTI, whichever. If there is an activity that you are doing within the task step line that has not been considered in your issue-based risk assessment, put that information into your continuous-based risk assessment template as far as the work being able to proceed doing the job, because you have conducted. What you would then do is you would then update your base information so that your baseline base information, your hazards and risks and your control measures would be part of your issue-based risk assessment. Okay, so I hope that is of the documents. Everybody is clear on that? Okay, can't hear you guys. So otherwise, if you need me to explain a little bit more, go ahead. Okay, so additional documents as well to consider. Of the time you will, even if you're working off a ladder, if it's above 2.5 meters. So, and obviously a lot of these documents require some form of compile a fall protection plan. There's specific trainings that you need to attend under the units, all the unit standard curriculum. I think it's 22999 or something to that you need to attend for these to compile such. Also be for a risk assessment. We know that in South Africa, even if they can, some clients can be so pedantic and still require you to, which is a couple of hours course that you'd sit together during your lunch break and then come back and chat a little bit, and then competent risk assessor. Whoopee. So yeah. Plan, which is a lot more information. I think the current one is 5 days, if I'm not mistaken. Detail, the one that I did, I enjoyed. So, and for example, the fall protection plan developer, that's approved for. So another thing is when you are getting, actually next, we'll go into the details. So next we look at legal appointments. I'm going to go into the incident reporting procedures, incident requirements, regulation 9 looking at incident registers, reports of accidents, emergency numbers, emergency drill can put under there. Then we look at some first aid documents, 2 forms, WCR1 forms that we will also add in there, and your induction records of the training that was done. The construction regulations, what annexure are we using for medical?
3.
Thank you. An effort that must be supplied within your medical surveillance reports. Other when you have your safety communications, be it toolbox meetings, memorandums, all of them. And then you have your inspection registers, checklist, COVID situation. We will also include the COVID-19. Some companies, I don't know why they do it. It frustrates me. And SARS proof of tax certificates and banking details. And I don't know why they operate like this. But an environment. So I don't understand or see why there's file. Okay. I sometimes used to get your clients' requirements and they asking for nothing to do with safety. And because it's in the safety, asking you, can you please provide this? Can you please provide that? Some of you didn't even study these things and they ask you for included in the safety file. So yeah, I'm going off about this issue, but many of the file, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, if your client asks for the tax clearances and BEE certificates, and you for it. Okay, I see JD, your hand is up.
Or to include a company profile, and then check that the company profile matches the scope of works, risk assessments within the file. Is that something that if they
look, it's understandable of what when you did a pre-qualification audit of the company is a construction company that is doing the work that they say they're going to verify compliance of their company profile. Because if that's the case, I can put on my company profile and then we can build a space rocket to the moon. It doesn't capable of doing it, and there's a track record of such. You know what I mean? He disputes it, but if the company, the client wants to see your profile, giving them a copy of your profile as well. But as I said, there's a lot of clients ask for in your safety file that are not safety. Okay, so yeah. So I'm gonna quickly go, still got 5 more minutes. I'm gonna quickly go back to the point on a little bit later, because we're gonna start going into the actual documents now. Well, when you have a legal appointment and we're talking about 16.1, anybody can give me a one if a client is asking for a 16.1 appointment. What would
is?
now see Asavella, go ahead Asavella.
one would be your CEO, right?
So, but what would be normally if a client asks for what documents would we normally put in? To be honest, what would we normally put in place there?
Accompanied by a CV.
In there, but there's something that I'm looking for. There's in regards to an appointment of a CEO. It's not really a legal document. It is a, but
Like,
what would
I'm
we
not sure.
usually add?
Not sure. Maybe Jaden can take that one.
Else before Jaden steals the show. Okay.
I don't know this one.
You don't know this one. I will add on the list of items that you've learned for today. The file when a client asks for a 16:1 appointment of a CEO is what is called now a board of resolution. Is basically an agreement and an acknowledgement of the CEO is the CEO. I don't want to sound sexist. So say we, the board of directors of WIB, Fabian, or hereby acknowledge that Fabian is the WIB Construction and Safety from the duration of this day to that. I, Fabian Buckley, hereby accept. This is not really an appointment, it's a designation to accept the signatures of the Board of Resolution and the other the Board of Directors, excuse me, as well. And that would coincide with your okay. So everybody would remember the Board of Resolution. Now, when we go on further, when it comes to a point, we're gonna have a short break as well now. We're gonna detail into the appointments, and I need to explain, especially on the construction regulation side of it. Be back in the next 10 minutes. Time is a bit off there, 10:40, we can join again. So that we're back to discuss the next topics as well. And then we're gonna dive straight into the documents. I know waiting to see these documents, what we're gonna be going through, criteria for these files, for these documents to be acceptable of employment and labor side as well. All right, if there's any question, any point that you'd like to share quickly or more, you can go ahead at 10:40. Okay. What time did we break at? Was it at 9:30?
If we're doing on an hour, then we should actually be going to quarter to.
Sorry, my mistake. Thank you. That's why I need your. Okay, so then yeah, we can go in. We still got enough time. We got 15 minutes. The topic of the appointments, and then we can after the break. So when it comes to the appointments, right, we focus on the six. The next step would be the 16.2 appointment. Obviously, you have to appoint from the top down. You never, and you can never appoint on the same level. Very, everybody needs to. It means is that, sorry, I was getting, when you're appointing a 16-1, appointing the 16 or her subordinate, it would mean that responsibilities, certain activities that needed to be performed under. So a 16-2 appointed person, them, meaning any other appointment would be done by the 16.2. When it comes to the construction regulations, a lot of people get caught out. When it comes to the construction regulation 8.7, it says that a construction manager in 7. Okay, so I know I'm jumping around a bit on the to explain that part of it. So moving back to around appointments, and one of the big questions that are asked is 16.2 and a 16.21 and a 16.2A, 16.2B, C, etc., etc. There is says that you cannot have a 16.2A, B, C, or show a hierarchy within an organigram. A 16.2, even if it's a 16.2 or a 16.2A, they another 16.2C. All of those appointments 16.1, which is the CEO. 16.2 is ABC, or 16.21, 2, 3, which indicating a hierarchy would all be done. Okay, I hope everybody understands that. But again, the structure of ABC or 1, 2, 3 do sometimes have multiple 16.2s working on a hierarchy through an organogram. That's also a way of proving hierarchical structure. Because when it comes to manager, is seen as the most senior person on a project. Manager doesn't even hold an appointment of a 16.2. Causes some confusion at times because it's but this person is as the law is concerned in a legal perspective, but they are the, you can get people that are the bosses of a project site. Not mean that those people are not in charge. From the OSHA's perspective aspects, you can sometimes in the past we used to have, as well, but that way, and that also changed through many of the companies where safety people are appointed as 16.2, but because those people don't have the authority and the power to make higher up the food chain, that would make those decisions when it comes to safety. Now, continuing on the appointments, important as well as their qualifications that you would include in on the what qualifications would I add to that?
the risk
Yeah,
assessor
surely,
training.
but you're a risk assessor or hire a training that hazard identification risk assessment. Risk assessment will be for the first aider, making sure that it's all approved company that you got your first aid certification. Very important aspect to cover now under appointments as well is especially when it comes to those that are considered as, you can have a competency of 5 years ago and using the same certificates. As far as the client, they would not accept that qualification. You get cases where training provides a lot. Training companies will give you a certificate and then they put it, your hire should not be expiring. Okay. But in 1 year's time, that certificate is now no longer valid if in their understanding. And now you go to a client site, risk assessor's appointments, and then the client says, sorry, this is opinion, and I've fought it in many cases. What the certificate expires based on what? If there's a requirement, etc., that specify these requirements for certificate, I'm not going to go to a higher course every year, make extra money, and they want to have a certificate only valid for 12 process or money making scheme. I'm just sharing my viewpoints. Sometimes you will encounter as well. So if you have that, you're going to have to resend that person for training. What I'm going to advise you, do not have expiry dates on their certificates, because nobody know expiration dates or expiry dates. And spend cheap by paying 500 Rand for pay 2,000 Rand for something that never expires. I would say it makes much more sense and it gives you less hassle.
Sorry,
I
obviously am accredited, and the big thing that we had with the first aid, so the original training, it doesn't exist anymore. So you would only have and the old DOL certificate that we had 3-year expiry, but some providers, people forgot too much important information 3 years down. But now with the new CETA accreditation, because it's a PO, there shouldn't be an expiry on a first. I believe that guidelines change and recommendations change.
Yes, I agree. But on your other dates on it?
No, so for the most part, actually, so I often get asked for clients where they say, oh no, they need to redo their WIB training. WIB, it's the same thing, but difficult. I understand why training providers, why we see more a case of there's certain information that's stuff student updated with the latest stuff. So for example, so it's a good idea to refresh your training.
But my gripe comes in with certain trainings that providers do is like for example on hire every year, and what is changing on how you do a risk assessment that's coming from the time of the Egyptians, so single year when it comes to certain courses. I do agree with like first aid, etc. One should never be clear and say, okay, I've been trained once 10 years ago and I know how to still do. I agree with you when it comes to that because people's lives are at stake. Trainings like hires and she reps and those things, I don't know putting expiry dates on those courses because it creates an clients because they want to hold you to this. And if you go to, for example, a no search DM and it expires every year. So what's the difference? So yeah, that's it on appointments. And then obviously, as I mentioned, your 16-point body else within the law. It would be required separately to that, to the 6.8.1, appointing the 8.6 regulation, which is basically your supervisor. All right. And then the 8.7 as well. So some people ask and say, okay, so if why shouldn't the 8.8 also be appointed? Because there's nothing wrong with you doing it. And what I sometimes suggest to companies to 16.2 appointments on there and the 8.7, and sometimes also if they want to, they can have. Now, a very critical thing is that if a company is contractor appointed, how many 8.1s will you have on that company? Contractors and 4 subcontractors. How many 8.1s would you? Anybody else? Anybody thinks there should be 5? Yes, correct. There would be only one 8.1. But now, so for each of those contractors, you contractor, and each of those companies need to have supervision 8.7s for those contractors.
Point the 16.1.
This is where the tricky part comes in. So I and labor with Pumudzo Mapa is the one of the time is that they want the 8.1 from the principal contractor of the subcontractor. Now I know yourselves now, really, how can the principal contractor, this is the way that the Department of Labor wanted it. Then on the project side, which is for the principal contractor, the would be his subordinate 8.2, and then under that 5 and the 8.7 and the 8.8. Everybody else again would be separately your 9.1, 10.18. Obviously, all be appointed by the 16.2 or 16. That's another important discussion to have. Now, 8.1 for the principal company or contractor would then appoint an 8.8 from the subcontractor. So that would mean that interviews will have to verify competency, CVs by the 8.1 because he can't appoint people or do not have the relevant experience. So this is the correct way into the structure to be done. 8.1 principal contractor appoints into the subcontracting structure of the 8.7. It's again, it's a gray area, but there's nothing as well. So go ahead, Jadine.
So, so another manager that I work with, what he's recommended that we do is, so we have an 8-point contractors, because we don't call them subbies, but contractors, we then say that functional 8.1 would then appoint the 8.7 within that.
That is actually wrong. As far as labor is concerned and the inspectors of what they've been trained on, I need to appoint the 8. There should be only one 8. It was quite specific. It says a principal contractor 1 for the duration of the contract, blah, 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 blah. So needs to appoint a 8.1. It does not state that a principal.
But what happens if you've got 5
so
principal?
Then you will have, for each company will have his own 8.1. That is acceptable. The principal contractor appointed in their own right. But if you have reporting directly to the clients and client agents, and under them they have structure, they would not have 8.1s for each company. It's normal, and they would have from a 8.5 onwards, because you need a safety officer 8.5. You need a 8.8 assistant supervisor, and then your 9.1s, etc., would all part of the 8.1 structure. That's part of the appointment. Now, something else that a lot of companies also do, which is also one, I was appointing everybody in the construction regulation. Construction manager appointing a 9.1, which is a risk assessor, 1A, and the 16.1, and all of those from the construction. It is wrong. The process and how it's supposed to be done, everybody else within the construction regulations and all other regulations. Appointment that must be done that way is the 8.1, include the 8.8s as well. The rest of them must be with some of the lawyers from Agricon as well. Geyser, and woman's name, he's an advocate as well. And Reinhard Lucian with these guys, and all of them are in the agreement that this is the way. Okay, so we need to take a break. It's now 10. We'll be back at 11 o'clock. We'll start bright and sharp at 11. Thank you. Okay, so it is 11 o'clock. Our 10-minute break is up. All right. So again, the presentation, and then I'm going to start going into the actual documents as I start going into the different documentation. So we have an hour now until 12 o'clock. And then we're going to have at 12 to 12:30 our lunch break. 12:30, and then we'll be utilizing our 30 minutes thereof. Let's dive into the continuation of. I hope everybody so far understands as the appointment structures are concerned and the importance of.
Sorry, I have one question. Sorry.
No problem.
Project manager be appointed as a principal contractor?
Can a project manager be appointed as a principal? Can a project manager be appointed as manager? You would have a project manager a lot of the time. You'd have a project manager company. So every company, depending on the size of the company as well, one-man or two-man show will not necessarily. On your bigger projects, bigger companies, they will have their own project managers, specific project and contract as well. So project manager can be a client, they can be a contractor as well, but a project manager cannot contractor in themselves. In other words, you cannot appear as the entire company representing the principal. What you can do is you can have a project manager that is in the principal contractor company and have under that person. There's nothing wrong with that. But from a principal contractor's perspective, that has to be met by that. So when it comes to the appointment letters and all other, unless that's is subcontracting all those activities out to other companies, then there's specific people appointed under him that are fulfilling those functions.
Sorry, we lost you a little bit there. It just we applied for a permit, and at that stage, permit application had to run for the client. So the company to the client was run with the permit as any construction whatsoever. They just managed the project, but they principal agent, for example, they will then appoint the contractors to the project. The principal contractor is what
them still being the principal contractor, because the law doesn't do or not do, as far as being appointed by the criteria that the principal contractor must meet, and that's all the requirement of what the principal contractor must do. When it comes to contractors and all of the other requirements, then that appoints a consultant, etc., to conduct all the. So again, there's nothing that says that one person as the principal contractor, but all required done by the principal contractor. Okay. All right. So next we moving on to actual SHE file now. This is where the exciting part comes in, actual documentation and some specifics as far as the safety file is concerned. Now, I've attached a 27-point sheet, just a bit of history on this. I've put this guided one of the documents that are provided or presented to my manager at the company I work for in Secunda. What I did of concern, and I mentioned it, Jadine, during our master class training as well for us, was with regards to safety files been approved or done in a professional manner. We had you because of the quality of the SHE files that were, and it was becoming a big factor as far as we would have to always give almost 2 weeks buffer, which should not take so long. In normal circumstances, conditionally approved, you should be able to get it within at least conditionally. But we were having files that were going in. So what I did was, excuse me, I have a point SHE file from Group Technologies, CESO, and which gives on the left-hand side, it gives the number and the element that the client is asking us to do, and then on the right-hand side is the comments, certain guidance and certain document templates as well that we could use, a guidance to the contractors to help them to better understand, to get a file approved by us, and also get the file. With Group Technologies, if you never worked for them before, a lot of the time they would request a contact to them after your approval, so you always have to make sure that you do. It depends as well on the safety specialist, but it's better to ensure that your file is done to a high standard file to be reviewed from their side, so they have that discretion that they can, the subcontractors as well. Okay, so this is the file guidance which I made, and as I will explain with some explanations as well. So 1, we got the SHE plan approval by service provider. Point 2, it says on the requirement here that we need to provide based on the client specifications. Now, the way of us getting around this point, whether it is something that you would provide to your sub do in order for you to ensure that you are complying with the SHE plan based on the client specifications. Can anybody think of some
Sorry, can you repeat
suggestions?
the question, please?
Okay. Give a suggestion of how they would review the manager of the company, let's say, and this is it's a legal requirement in the first place. The SHE plan is drafted on specification. But what could we do in order for this? So there's different steps that I'm basically asking you, but as to how you would possibly do this.
Are you referencing like a verified documentation stage?
So yeah, your pre-qualification process would have, now we're at the stage where the company is now on site, and we're working in this scenario, we working on CESO. I think they've changed their name recently again. They change it almost every couple of years. So now they expect us to provide them with a client specification, which is them, they are the client, right? What to ensure that we are complying to this first, for the SHE plan to be compliant according to the coming onto the side. What would the first process be, your first step be, is complying according to the specification. Would like to take a stab at this?
I just know with our SHE plans, we try and index the SHE plan vacation. So we would check that the index of the spec.
Excellent, Jadine. So, and I'm going to share my screen, right? So what you're basically saying is that according to your specification, so what that would be set up in such a way that it would coincide. In other words, if your first section of SHE specification, excuse me, requires you to have documents or companies that I use that I review. So this is what I'm going to be sharing. So for an example, right, the first section of the SHE plan, addendums, and talks about if your client has a requirement under section 1, for an example, your project objectives, you would do exactly the same thing. From your specification, I hope that if possible, they can give you the Word document for explain to them as well. And this is my suggestion. Expect to suit yourself. You're right. You need education that can assist you when you are compiling your SHE plan. Writing out a whole lot of information from the spec. Okay. So what I would know, Word or open document template. If not, and editing documents, a PDF edit, you can also use those. I use, I don't want to tell you how I got it, so I'm not on a recorded training session, but and it works extremely well. So I'm just showing you, and you can see it converted into Word, and it keeps it. So what you do with this information is videos pertaining to section 1 under your project. Of this information from your client specific, just using it as an example of a spec, you would copy plan. Now following the section 1 is project objective. you're going to have section 2 is site organizational structure. As site organizational structure. Now, time your company has a copy is your copy and paste or your main sheet plan. Obviously, within your company, you're going to get your permissions from your company and according to your client requirements, because it's a legal requirement. Copy and paste it into the relevant sections so that besides it looking nice and keeping it in a uniform manner, to do it in this way. Jumps in. Can somebody else just consider this question as to why we would want to keep the sequence? If under section 1 is project objectives from the project objectives on my side in my sheet plan, why would again, there's no wrong answers. There's just room for a try at this one. Why do they think it may project sheet plan and my client specification and 1, section 2 and 2, 3 and 3, etc. Put in this way.
I don't think I'm allowed to answer. As available answer.
Take a try. I don't know if they're scared. I think we're gonna bite their head. So as a Vela, if you can go away.
Well, I think
ask
for
everyone.
purposes, obviously, it makes it easier for on your health and safety plan.
That's very good. That's a very good way of process from the client side. Makes sense. Or Mariana to jump in here, learning from each other, and if your answer is not as well, so don't be scared to speak out. Yeah. So can jump in there, take a try at it.
The comment is that the mic is not working.
Gerlin?
Yes. Yes, sir. Understanding each and everyone.
Mariana? Mariana, any some nervous people, or is it the mic as well? Okay. All right. So Jadine, you can also take a stab at that your way. I also like.
So I think
as well as your comments.
I think it's so you don't miss any critical information. Then you haven't missed a point.
Thank you. Both of you all have hit the nail on the head. Everybody can go home because you all have now come to define within yourself and your company that you will, according to the client requirements and the specific. That is it in a nutshell. I don't know what I'm come to my end of my training. No, I'm just joking. So importantly that we need to identify specific as now. Very importantly, as clients will have as far as okay, so I'm gonna go out of this the sheet but onto the sheet specifications, okay, of the client as to what we need to comply with. Now, when they give quite a lot of documents, before it was a lot less that they had for a very long time, and then they slowly started the deliverables and contract. But you'll see that they have, for an example, they have a okay that you would then need to, from these 16 pages in place for them to accept your. So this would be your generic stuff that they would give you included, all right, and then your specific which is okay. Again, you can see some because of the fact that they were scanned in documents, especially when it comes to retyping out stuff. So that's why if they can provide you with the open document, because it helps you way out. Please, people understand this. It is the best. You need to reinvent the wheel as far as your sheet plan is concerned, which is very prescriptive. Now, when it comes to specifics, like I'm going to give you a silly example, requires you to have pink orders for laborers, white orders for supervisors, green orders for. You need to ensure that your sheet plan requirements, okay, it is very, very correlates with patient. And this is now the important part of the is to ensure that you go through every single specification. Now you will go of work. Now under section hours of work, you section of hours of work states over here. Copy the sheet plan. Make sure that your this sequence of what they have it here after, for example, your hours of work. There's nothing wrong with you numbering it accordingly as well.
Sorry, not that it's in relation to this sheet plan from the spec, also help the OSH allocation, because obviously if the client specified to allocate in my budget for that.
And that's why it's so important that you is provided within your deliverables of your tender. Have no excuse at the end of the day to say that they did not know. One is that you can utilize the client specifications, copy, and that would be passed on to your contractor when they're pricing for the attenders. Now, you can do it that a separate attached document which needs to be issued in your tender pack as well. Okay, so you can either copy the contractors, the clients can, as long as everything has been considered within you. I used to also do is, and it's a suggestion, you don't have my client specification and add it into my SHE plan. But what I would ask or some sort of way of identifying that this area or company's requirements, and I would have a SIP, whatever the case may be, for the client requirements. That's defining what is your company requirements and what is the client requirements, and discussion on this point. When it comes to your subcontractor plan, which was drafted based on the client specification, times where you have a better, let's say for an example, your client says in place if you work in above 2.5 meters and for protection plan and specific and SHE plan to wear for protection when working at 2 meters. Working under you need to comply with the 2 meters. Anybody else can answer this one, please? Think about it, guys. What would that's under you to comply with? If the client is 2. SHE plan requirements is 2 meters, your fall protection plan is 2.5 meters height or 2.2 meter or fall protection for prevention. What's requirement? 2.5 or 2 meters?
Client requirements.
Okay, Jerilyn is saying 2.5 meters. Anyone? To Asavella, what's your take on it? 2 meters or?
I would think that it's
Thank you. Okay, Jadine, you can go ahead as well.
Say that the client's requirements supersede the contractor's one was the client requirement.
Your hours. If your client company requirements is 2 meters, your contractors will go because it is better than your client's requirements. You're classified in the spec. Your own specific requirements as far as anyone working on my project site. I'm the principal contractor.